Tesla's brand loyalty is very, very high, very strong once again, year after year. Sometimes it tops the charts, and it also depends on which chart it is. But there's a big reason, and one of those reasons could be the safety factor. We're going to discuss both of those things today, along with my good friend Herbert from Brighter. I'm Brian. Welcome to Futuraza. So yeah, again, as always, we get these brand loyalty things showing up saying, "Check it out, man." Uh, Tesla took half the awards for brand loyalty in the automotive industry in S&P's Global Mobility's new study. Once you go electric, you don't go back. So the big thing, one of the big takeaways is people who buy an EV become pretty loyal to that drivetrain. Have you
I
found that
don't
to
think that
be?
I don't think that's true, Brian. I
Hmm.
don't think that that's true. I think what we've seen in the data that I've seen in the past is that people who buy Tesla electric
Mhm.
vehicles don't ever switch. But people who buy electric vehicles from other car companies, they have issues. They can't find their charging system, right? They have more problems.
And
That's
yeah,
the but and here's the thing, right? I know that the brand loyalty for gas cars, like specifically like Ford, BMW, Mercedes, right? These are iconic brands. They've built up the brand for decades. My sister is a big BMW and Mercedes fan. They will fly to Europe to go to Germany. They will pick their cars, have them delivered to Canada. They love that brand so much, and they will stick with that brand no matter what. But once they go with the Mercedes EV or the EVs from their brand, it's lacking. And then
mm,
they will switch to Tesla. This is what I've been seeing, as opposed to, once you go EV, you don't go V8. Do you agree with that? I think it's Tesla.
I think it is. And if this is a study of American buyers, although it it would skew heavily towards Tesla sales. I had a chance to test drive a Mercedes, I think MQB 350. I don't remember
Yeah.
what the first letters were, but it was the little 5-seat crossover SUV. And it was a deeply disappointing experience. It was, comfortable, I guess, but I got in, I had the test drive, ride and drive person with me, and I got in and I hit go ahead and start on the screen, and then I'm like, it's not going. I don't know what to do. You have to press the start button, and I look everywhere. You know where it is? It's hidden behind the stock. You can't see it from your line of sight.
Yeah.
So we're off to a great start. It didn't feel sporty. It didn't feel the traction control was lacking. It was a dry day, but it still
Yeah.
felt like it was struggling to bite. And looking around, I was like, this is not a compelling car, kind of at any price. And the styling of it just didn't feel Mercedes to me. It felt on the outside, it did not stir my cocoa, I guess you could say. So, but I will
I
tell
love it.
you, if other brands
Yeah.
I wouldn't rule out another EV from another
Sure.
manufacturer in the future. I
Yeah.
am probably ruined for that because the software is so good in a Tesla. The finding charging is effortless in a Tesla. You just if your destination is in, your charging is already being planned for you in the background. It's got and then the other day for no reason I get a software update that says, by the way, we added a new feature. If you're parked at home and you're under 50% of your charge limit, we'll
Yeah.
notify you on your phone if you forgot to plug it in because it looks like you forgot to plug it in.
Hmm.
That sounds so easy, but no one's ever done it before. And I don't see any signs that the other manufacturers are even going to try. Why would they?
Hmm.
They certainly wouldn't put it on the old cars that you already have. So
Yeah.
for these brand loyalty surveys, they go there and the satisfaction surveys, they tend to be all over the place in my experience, where sometimes you'll see Rivian uh, by far in first place with like 85% buyer satisfaction.
I saw that one recently. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
And that's the reason is because when I saw that Rivian was higher than Tesla, Tesla's further down. Couple reasons, right? One is that Rivian has very small number of buyers, and so you're going to have the rabid fans, just like Tesla did for the last several years. These are the biggest fans who are driven by the mission, and so they're loyal. They're going to be loyal to the brand. But as Tesla gets into the 2 million to 3 million to 5 million to 8 million sales, you're going to start getting regular people buying Tesla because they heard about it, and yet still very high loyalty, right? Great car. But Rivian, they're going to be higher because it's this tiny little numbers, right? A couple 100,000 people max have owned a Rivian. You know what I mean? That's the way I saw that. You can't compare those two because they're totally different stages of their evolution.
Well, and it doesn't mean that either is a bad car or either is a good car. It means that the buyers are just plain happy, and that's fine
Yeah.
too. On this
Yeah.
survey, the interesting one was General Motors won for brand loyalty and Tesla won
Mhm.
for make loyalty. And I guess if the question is, would you buy another Model Y? My answer would be absolutely. Um, and so I guess I can see why they would split it out,
Make
but
loyalty.
make, yeah. Are you happy with this model? Because there may be people who would buy, a sedan who say, no, my next one would be a
Hmm.
crossover or a
Hmm.
pickup or something else. So I don't know. But there are some interesting ones on there. But what we were talking about, what I shared with you before we went on the show, was the new crash test ratings are out. Very exciting. These are uh, every year, the IIHS, the Insurance Institute for Highway Safety, buys and crashes a bunch of cars. What a fun job. And last year there were too many 5 stars. So this year they went ahead and upped the bar. And they do this every year. If you take a five
Interesting.
star crash rated car from
Yeah.
25 years ago and run it on
Yeah.
the new tests, it's not going to
Yeah.
get very good marks. Those old
Right. Right.
Volvos did very well on those tests, but by today's standards, uh, would
Yes.
would struggle a bit. And of course, there are 22 cars that qualified for the highest safety score, Top Safety
Hmm.
Pick Plus. And of course,
Hmm.
one of them was the Model Y. The
Hmm.
Model 3 has not completed its testing, or there were some metrics that they hadn't submitted yet. Um, R1S and R1T also received awards. They both only qualified for Top Safety, not Top Safety Plus, and other EVs. Why are EVs safer, Herbert?
Oh, I think most people know this, don't they? You have a very, very heavy battery, very thick battery placed at the very bottom. And so when you hit it, a side impact, you're going to hit the battery. It's going to be harder to actually crush the side panel. When you hit it, it's because it's so heavy, it's hard to flip the car over. Um, I mean, those are just one of the. I
Just
think
two.
the other thing was that blew my mind when I learned this because there's no engine, right? The engine's the size of a shoebox. There's a lot of these parts you don't need in the front of an electric vehicle versus a car. You can use that extra space for not only a frunk but actually crumple zone. So when somebody hits you, it's much more likely to crumple before you actually get, the cabin's pushed back versus the engine is going to push the whole cabin in and you're like, you're out of luck. So there's just so many of these things that just add up. You don't have you
Yeah,
don't have a tank of gas. I find it funny that people go, battery cars is gonna blow, it's gonna go on fire. It's like you have a tank of gasoline and you're just somehow that's going over your head.
right.
You know,
It's got combustion in the name of the drivetrain. I am not sure how this is confusing. And for that matter, you've got the traction control on an electric motor is
mm,
is so much better than any
mm,
internal
mm.
combustion could possibly be. So there's a lot of safety elements
So
that are,
right,
yes,
this was crash safety testing, but if you add in like the fact that Tesla has all these cameras, right, the ability to actually be better in terms of ADAS services, right, safety, it's crazy.
right. And that, of course, the best accident is no accident.
No
All
accident.
these other factors come into play. That's why, even though Teslas are quite expensive, the parts are not super cheap, the insurance rates are comparable to a BMW 3
Mm,
Series, to a vehicle of comparable um, in its class. The parts are not more expensive. And even if the parts are more expensive, they are less likely to crash. And as quick as these cars are, they don't seem to attract the hot rod mentality. So when you see, for example, there was a time
mm.
in, I want to say, the late 90s, early 2000s, when they found that Camaros had the highest death rate. And it's
Yeah,
not because they're the fastest cars on the road, it's because they carry a hot rod mentality, and they were affordable. So you get a lot
yeah.
of fools.
The
behaving
other thing I think a
dangerously.
reason is I find that the acceleration of these electric vehicles is so quick, right? The torque is so fast. That's actually a safety, right? Because when you're in the middle of an intersection and you want to go faster, you're going to get out of the way quicker. But once you let go of the pedal, it slows down, right? The car slows down immediately. So when you are going really fast, but then it slows down faster versus if you're driving a gas car and you've hit speeds, very high speeds, and then you let go of the gas pedal, it's still going very fast. Sure, you got the momentum, right? And you have to press the brakes to slow down. And that, you know what I mean? It's much faster to stop with a electric vehicle than it is with a gas car. So those all add up to, additional safety reasons.
They sure do. They sure do. There was a conversation I had with one of the big Tesla fudsters who loves to go out and do track days in his dyno burners. And he
Hmm.
said that the plaid brakes are just grossly inadequate, grossly
Hmm.
undersized.
Hmm.
And I argued that they weren't, in part because we saw a test where they did the brake test on a
Yeah, I saw
drag
that one.
strip
I saw that.
against a
Yeah.
Bugatti, which has the
Yeah.
beefiest brakes in the world, and
Yeah.
the plaid, which I don't think yet had the upgraded track package, still beat it. And it's because the motor is doing some of that work too. And
Yeah.
I explained that when we did our plaid day at the Michigan event last summer, we had a 1.7 mile stretch of road closed off for us by the sheriff's department, and we would drag race down it and drag race back. And you could get to, I mean, we were only supposed to go to like 100, but you get to 135 and back off and get all the way down to zero without touching the brakes in 1.7 miles. We
Yeah.
didn't use the brakes. It's the design itself has a lot of built-in inherent safety issues. So looking here, it shows different ones. A 4,200-pound deformable barrier heads down the runway at 37 miles an hour, slams into
Mm.
the car. And they're all kinds of, these are insightful to me to watch. I've watched crash tests on everything I've owned. And
Mhm.
having watched the crash tests of the Nissan Quest that I used to have was a
Mhm.
big motivator to get rid of
Mhm.
it
Get
because
rid of it, yeah.
it was not, it was the last model made before they started doing small overlap tests. And on the
Mm.
small overlap, watching it was terrifying. So had to move out of that vehicle and into something that protects my family because, as someone pointed out to me, if something happened to your family and it was within your power to have prevented it, how would you live with yourself?
Yeah, I was, talking to my wife about buying a new car, and we were going through kind of the reasons, and of course, as soon as you say safety, like, you should have led with that. I go,
Right.
"Yes, I know, I usually do," but for the people I talk to here, safety is, like, the last thing they care about, but for, families, safety's the first. It really still is. We bought a Volvo because it's the safest car at the time, a
Yeah.
decade ago.
My sister did the same thing. The only reason she doesn't have a Volvo now is she needed a minivan. So she went to
Yeah,
Honda Odyssey or Toyota Sienna. I don't remember which now, but uh, one of the safer ones than the Nissan Quest, which was built on the Nissan Altima platform, which is too small of a platform, the amount
yeah.
of weight that they put on it. So yeah, there are. So the takeaway is um, Teslas are enjoy higher brand loyalty, and part of the reason may be the safety, and the safety is inherent to all EVs, but it's especially true at Tesla, where they've been able to, well, where they've focused on it as a leader. As a leader, that is
Mhm.
the top priority. Uh, Other priorities are very high. I think they may have priorities that are just as important as safety, but I don't think there's anything more important than safety because there are a
Mhm.
lot of corners they could cut and make more money, and they choose not to. And I appreciate that. That improves my brand loyalty, not that I need a lot of encouragement. So, what did we miss? What did we misunderstand? How important is safety to you guys? Is it that big a deal? Who cares if your brakes work? Your car will stop eventually. And everybody else, like, subscribe, do the usual things, hit the buttons. You know what they're for. Maybe head over to Brighter with Herbert, see what he's up to these days. He does a lot of fantastic work with an amazing list of guests. And everybody else, stay tuned, stay juicy, and I cannot wait to hear from you clever robots on the flippity flop.